Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, hi, I'm Debbie and I make art videos. In today's video, we're going to be putting together a gouache palette, a wet gouache palette. So I'm pretty excited about this. Let's get started. There are a lot of these types of palettes available, and I picked this one out. It's from a family-owned business on Amazon. I picked out a selection of colors that I thought I might want to use. I did have to pare it down a bit because there are 18 wells and I have more than 18 colors. The palette came with this cute little mustache sticker, and it opens up and it has two mixing areas, but one of the sides pops out, so you have an extra tray, and that's the tray that I plan to use. I was planning on decorating it with my own stickers, but that mustache just spoke to me, so I ended up putting them on there too. I've had wet palettes in the past that have gone moldy, and so I've been hesitant to put a new one together, but I feel like it's about time I did, and I feel like having my colors ready to go will get me painting more often. So these are the colors I decided on, and I put them in the order that I like to work in, and recommend that you do the same thing too, because I think that if it's familiar to you, or if you know the way that you like to mix, then lay it out the way you like. So I usually have the yellows beside the blues, and then the reds to the side. That's my main watercolor palette. And so I always like to have the blues and the yellows close to each other. I like swatching with a flat brush when it comes to gouache especially, and I made a little swatch card so I can keep that with it somewhere close by or just in my drawer near my desk. I like to make a little swatch card for all my palettes just as a quick reference. This is the little palette tray that snaps out of the palette, and I'm gonna work with it like that on the side when I'm working. And I'm gonna try not to really mix in this area because I'm gonna try to keep these colors clean for as long as possible and just use this as my mixing surface. So what I'm gonna do is add a little bit of paint into each well and then add the right amount of water, because that's the purpose of making this palette for me anyways, to make sure I get a nice thick gouache consistency. And if you're not sure what that's supposed to be, something like a yogurt. And that's going to take a little bit of time, so do it on a day that you have some time. Listen to a podcast, watch some YouTube videos, do something relaxing while you're doing this, because it's going to take some time and you might as well enjoy it. So if you're planning on doing this yourself, there are no right or wrong colors to add into your palette, and your palette might look very different than mine. I tend to be more into getting a variety of different primaries, and I don't use as many convenience colors like purples or greens. But having said that, I do feel like I should learn to use purple more because I don't really know how to use it, and I've seen some people use it in place of a blue and it looks really interesting. So I think as a starting point, have a warm and a cool of each of the primaries, a warm and a cool red and blue and yellow, and then add whatever else you like. Add colors that you like because you're the one that's going to be painting. If you've never done this before, warning, it's going to be messy, especially if you have little jars to fiddle with. So keep a palette knife handy, and some toothpicks might be necessary, and definitely a roll of paper towel. So I was meticulously cleaning all my tools in between colors because I feel like with gouache, especially more than other paint pigments or paints that I've tried, anyways, the color shifts so quickly, so you want to keep your colors clean. So that means changing your water often. That means keeping your brushes clean, keeping your palette knife clean, and just trying to maintain that purity of color, because gouache will just turn into something else. I wish I could tell you a formula for adding water, but it really depends on the pigment and how old your pigments are sometimes, because some of these jars are really old and they're kind of dried out, and some pigments I notice are just a little bit chunkier. So just try to get them to the same consistency, and that will vary from pigment to pigment. I would just opt adding very little at a time, and one of these little eyedropper things you can find at a craft store or an art store, and they are very handy to have around. Since putting this together, I watched a video from M. Hughes who mentioned using a watercolor blending medium. I ordered some and I can't wait to try it, so I'll let you know how that goes when I get some. I'm more comfortable with watercolor, or maybe I just have more experience with it, and my tendency is to make gouache watercolory. And I like that effect sometimes for putting down layers at the beginning of a piece, but I often find I run into trouble with too much water. I make it way too watery, and then you don't get that nice coverage that gouache is known for and kind of where it shines. So I've been using a paper palette because I've been traveling a lot this year, and I find that because I was mixing directly on the palette, I was not achieving the consistency that I want. So part of me putting this together is to try to get the gouache at the right consistency, so when I'm dipping into it, it's ready to go and I'm not adding more water. Whenever you're working with gouache, it's important to always, always, always have a clean water jar and a dirty water jar. Because I am obsessed with this thing of tainting the gouache, I just worked with one collection of hues, so blues, and then changed the water, did reds, and then changed the water, did yellows, and then changed the water, etc., etc. And that might sound crazy, but this little card is a reference, and it should be a good reference if it's going to be for your own personal use. And so I think that that is just the way to go, you know? You got to get up, stretch your legs anyways. So change your water. So I've had this palette set up for about a week now, and ever since I've had it at my desk, I have been painting very regularly. So it's working. My tactic is working. And I find that the seal isn't like super good, and so I have to kind of top up the moisture level on it every few days or so, and I don't know if it should be more airtight than that, but it's fine for me because I'm looking at it regularly. I'm hoping that this medium that's been rumored out there, that watercolor medium, helps with that as well, maintain the moisture. But it's nice to have it handy and ready to go. My tactic with myself, because sometimes you have to trick yourself into doing things, is to remove resistance. If I have things organized and I have things ready, then I will do them. And I figured out things that work for me. I would recommend you figure out the triggers that work for you, because if it gets you making more art, then that's awesome. I always forget to mention this, but I usually put material lists in my description box, so check that below if you're interested. I hope that was useful to you if you're putting together your own wet gouache palette, and let me know in the comments below how you like to use your gouache. Do you like to use a dry palette? Do you like to use a wet palette? Or do you like to just squeeze it out as you need it? And thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you at the next one. Bye.